Valenwood is the home of cannibalistic elves, walking cities and vast rainforests, and is also a possible setting for Elder Scrolls 6. The history of this nation is filled with epic battles and fascinating lore, and its unique landscape makes for an exciting potential setting for the next game. So let's dive deep into the lore of Valenwood. Valenwood is a southwestern province of Tamriel. To its east lies the Khajiit homeland of Elsewhere, and to the north is the Imperial province of Cyrodiil. A mixture of heavy rainfall and warm temperatures has nurtured the forest wilderness that covers most of its central landmass, while a series of mangrove swamps run along the coast. Most of Valenwood is uninhabited, its forest wilderness being far too harsh for most people. However, this is the homeland of the Bosmer, also known as Wood Elves, and they have no trouble traversing even the densest of thickets. They mainly live in clan houses, scattered across the nation, although some also choose to live in cities housed inside colossal migratory trees called the Grat Oaks. These trees stand at up to a mile high and were imbued with magic that allowed them to move, but over the centuries a number of them have become permanently rooted. Most of the people in Valenwood are Bosmer, with a few other races mixed in. However, over the centuries, there have also been some other unique races, like the Imga, giant apes who were native to Valenwood and idealised the high elves of the nearby Somerset Isles, trying to mimic their fashion, language and manners. It is unclear how exactly the Bosmer first arrived in Valenwood, but in the centuries before recorded history, they spread out across the region and settled in small, isolated communities. The earliest recorded history begins with the First Era, and the unification of the Bosmer into a single group called the Cameron Dynasty. It's also around this time that they began to give patronage to the forest god. As a part of this worship, the Green Pact was created, which said the Bosmer would never kill, injure or eat any of the vegetation in Valenwood. This had a massive impact on the Bosmer way of life. They forged their bows and arrows from bone rather than wood. Construction required working with their natural surroundings or importing wood or stone, and they became religiously carnivorous. In fact, as a part of this Green Pact, they also had to follow something called the Meat Mandate, which dictates that any fallen enemy must be eaten before 3 days have passed. This religious cannibalization led to changes in the Bosmer's approach to combat, most notably that their fighters would often fast for days before battle and then host grand feasts upon victory to dine on the dead. Throughout most of the First Era, Valenwood maintained its independence. However, the Cameron Dynasty eventually caved to the unrelenting warfare from Cyrodiil and was brought into their empire. The Empire controlled Valenwood for many centuries, but eventually fell, and the Cameron Dynasty was once again able to reassert itself and unify the Bosmer. However, the pressure, both internally from various heirs to the dynasty who each wanted to rule, and externally from Cyrodiil, continued to rise. To bring an end to this, a pact was formed between the current leader of the dynasty and the Ultima of the Somerset Isles. Together they formed the Aldmeri Dominion, and were able to silence the other heirs and drive back the forces of Cyrodiil. The Aldmeri Dominion continued to grow in power and forged strong alliances with the Khajiit in Elsewhere, as well as many other groups across Tamriel. At this time, most of the continent was divided between the Dominion and the Empire, and these two mighty forces existed in somewhat of a stalemate, with neither having the power to destroy the other. That was until Tiber Septim, the current leader of the Empire, got his hands on the Numidium, a colossal humanoid golem that was said to have been 1,000 feet tall. Tiber Septim used this new weapon to subjugate all of Tamriel, including Valenwood and the Somerset Isles, an event that is still remembered by the surviving elves with horror. With Tiber Septim now Emperor of all of Tamriel, he ordered that the Second Era come to an end. His power was vast, but Tiber Septim was also wise enough to know that allowing the Bosmer to retain some of their independence would limit any desertion, so he allowed the Cameron kings to remain and local chiefs to be appointed, but they would all answer to him. The Empire remained in power, and for centuries the Bosmer lived under the laws of this strange and alien society. That was until the day the Cameron usurper arrived. This so-called pretender to the Cameron dynasty's throne began their uprising with the help of their Daedric allies. They stormed across Valenwood and in just 2 years had pushed the Empire out and freed the Bosmer. This happened long after Tiber Septim had died, and the current leader of the Empire was weak and slow to react to the usurper, and before he knew it, the Bosmer forces were marching north, towards Hammerfell. The Empire sent a large number of mercenaries to stop them, but the usurper either bribed or killed them, and those that fell before his army were raised again as undead slaves, increasing the size of his force with each battle won. Eventually, he had conquered most of Hammerfell and continued to march north, towards High Rock. It was here that he would eventually be stopped at the Battle of the Firewaves, when a few brave leaders of High Rock made one final stand, defeating him and his army. However, the legacy of Cameron Usurper continued as his son, Mankar Cameron, would later play a significant role in the Oblivion Crisis. But before that could happen, another conflict tore through Valenwood, when a series of Khajiit raids on Bosmer caravans caused the Bosmer to hit back, striking at a Khajiit town and killing over 1,000 civilians before being driven off. This sparked the 5-year war, and although the Bosmer found some early victories, they would eventually be defeated, losing territory to the Khajiit, along with many lives. The Third Era came to a close with the end of the Oblivion Crisis, and around this time, the Aldmeri Dominion also made a resurgence, expanding once again from the Somerset Isles and into Valenwood. They pushed out the remnants of the Empire's rule and crushed any rebellions against them. It wasn't long before they had complete control and were able to expand the Dominion's influence across Tamriel, pushing the Empire back even more. As tensions rose, the Dominion sent an ambassador to the Imperial City with a long list of demands and a covered cart. The Emperor at the time rejected the ultimatum, so the ambassador upended the cart, spilling 100 severed heads across the floor. These were the heads of every Empire spy and Blade agent in the Somerset Isles and Valenwood. This ignited the Great War between the Dominion and the Empire. Over the coming year, the two sides would fight many battles, most of which the Dominion won as they took territory in Cyrodiil and Hammerfell. Eventually they forced their way towards the heart of the Empire, and the infamous sack of the Imperial City began. The palace was burned, the White Gold Tower looted, and all manner of atrocities were carried out by the vengeful elves, who had suffered for centuries at the hands of the Empire. The Dominion believed they had all but won, so they began to negotiate the terms of the Emperor's surrender. He allowed them to believe he was giving up, but in fact he was secretly gathering his forces to retake the capital. In what became known as the Battle of the Red Ring, the Empire destroyed the entire Dominion army in Cyrodiil in a display of tactical genius. However, both sides were greatly weakened, and eventually a treaty was created to bring peace. Large areas of Hammerfell were given to the Dominion, which in itself would cause a later war, but most importantly, the worship of the god Talos was outlawed. Talos was once known as Tiber Septim, the emperor who had destroyed the Dominion at the end of the Second Era. The Imperials and many others across Tamriel believed that following his death, he ascended to godhood. However, he is despised by the Bosmer and the Altmer, who also claim that a man could never become divine. With the treaty signed, the Dominion has continued to grow in power and prestige, and are now able to dictate their will to the Empire. Something we saw in Skyrim, when agents of the Dominion were tasked with stamping out Talos worship in the area, and ignited a civil war with the Stormcloaks. However, back in Valenwood, there have been some strange rumours that the Dominion has been cleansing the area. A Bosmer in Skyrim reports that their entire family was murdered as a part of this practice.
The Thalmor wiped out his family back in Valenwood during one of their purges that we never hear about.
Agents of the Dominion have also taken to referring to the Great War as the First War with the Empire, implying a second one is being planned, and peace between the two sides remains as fragile as ever. That brings us as far as possible in the timeline, up to the events of Skyrim and its DLC, but with the prospect of another great war on the horizon and strange rumours from Valenwood, there is plenty of potential for this to be the next setting in the Elder Scrolls series. However, it's perhaps not quite a big enough area for a new Elder Scrolls game, so maybe it will be combined with elsewhere. So in a future lore video, we will be diving into the home of the Khajiit, so be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss it. As always, this is James for Curse, saying thanks for watching, and enjoy the game.